As you might notice, I'm currently standing in a finely hand-drawn Venetian canal, and right behind me there are two very passionate girls that are probably about to be fined for public indecency. And some people think that this is art, and so is all of this. This volume I decided to talk about today is quite a difficult one to talk about without sounding like one of those I know what good manga actually is, so I'm better than you type of people. But I will try. So this volume right here is called La Pompe Prisonnière. Sorry, French people. Sorry, that's probably butchered the pronunciation. And supposedly it means something along the lines of imprisoned apple or apple prison or something like that. If you actually know the correct translation of this, please let me know down in the comments. I would be really curious to know it. And it is made by Kenji Tsuruta. Now, what the fuck is that? You might be wondering. And I don't blame you because I have also never heard of this guy before. Stumbling upon this manga volume and getting absolutely captivated by the cover art, which is quite beautiful. But it's got really good composition, really cool colors. It's really nice. Kenji Tsuruta is somewhat famous for his anthology manga called Spirit of Wonder, which was published from 1986 to 1994, if I'm not mistaken, but also for the Emanon series, as well as the Wandering Island, and well, this. But what is this manga about? Yeah. So, first of all, this is not a series, nor is it like a one shot manga. It's more of an anthology type of thing. This volume right here contains 16 stories that range from being like barely 3 pages in length to about 10 at most. They all tell stories that are pretty much left to interpretation. Also, because for the most part, there is basically zero dialogue. Having read this volume, I decided to try and dig up as much information as I could about this author. And one very interesting fact I found out about him is the fact that although his stories seem to be completely unlinked and very fragmented, after you start paying a bit more attention, it's not that difficult to notice a certain fil rouge that, although mostly visual, manages to cement an instantly recognizable identity to this author's work. First of all, there are cats. Kenji Tsuruta, as he himself states in the commentary section of this anthology, is quite fond of cats, having owned multiple and even inserted them in basically all of his works. In this anthology, for example, we meet four of them, and although Oni, this one, which I think that's a tuxedo cat, if I'm not mistaken, well, although he's like the one that has more screen time, there are many other felines in this cast. There is the one-eyed MJ, or Jack for short. I don't know how Jack is shorter than MJ, but that's what Kenji Tsuruta says. The angry-looking Hana, and also the striped and violent Chichan. Sadly, the only one that is still alive out of all of these cats, at least at the time of publishing, which happened quite some time ago, because I think this volume came out in like 2013 or something like that. And so yeah, I really hope that this guy is doing good. But as Kenji Tsuruta says, like the other ones, all of his other cats live to like about 18 to 19 years, so I wouldn't worry too much. What makes these stories so recognizable is also the setting. Some of them are set in very old, abandoned, and decrepit structures. These tend to be like a lot more absurd, portraying very surreal and dreamlike scenes, usually starring just one human character and one or a lot more cats. Some stories that use these elements in the most fascinating ways are, for example, the first four of this anthology. A girl walking through a dark cave holding a chest with a cat on her head. She fights the darkness with a handmade torch, but as it fades out, she ends up burning her own clothes to keep it alive. I love it when ecchi scenes are contextualized, at least in a way. Because, I'm not saying that this situation is anywhere close to to make sense in like a real life context. But still, I appreciate the fact that she wasn't just, randomly taking a stroll to a dark cave completely naked. Something happened so that she had to get naked. please understand what I'm saying. This story, which I think is connected to the second and the third ones, shows even more takes on this idea of an empty, potentially endless space where the protagonist might be completely alone at this point, almost taking the role of some sort of survivor of like a greater catastrophe. After getting out of the cave, this girl finds herself on some train tracks, surrounded by nothing else than water. Well, is this world that suffered major flooding? I mean, that could be the case, because just a couple pages later, we see the same girl swimming underwater. And it seems like this endless sea covers what once used to be a populated area, because, there are roads, there are houses, there are road signs. It seems like it just covered cities. The first story is seemingly set in the same world, or at least a very similar one. But now the protagonist lives in a tall, decrepit tower, where, as she states, she has access to food and alcohol. No more information is really given to you. Because, like, why is she living in the tower? How long has she been living in the tower? Where did the food and alcohol come from? We will probably never know. I would bet that not even Tsuruta sensei himself has the answers to these questions. And that is honestly what I love about these stories so much. Let me get poetic for a second. They're almost like these short sparkles that suddenly light up your imagination. Sure, there is no official answer to the questions above, for example, but there's no need, really. These stories have such an endless and stimulating amount of possibilities to engage in suppositions and theories that, a 5-page can honestly keep you entertained for hours. But, to be honest with you, I would honestly pay good money for, like, a director's take version of this volume. That would, dig deeper into the world building, the lore, and all that shit. I would love that. So, in the last 6 stories, also set in a similar setting, there is somewhat more of a story going on. As stated by the author in the commentary section, this girl's name is Her Majesty, and she's the sole survivor of what we do not know. Anything you fucking want. She seems to be living together with a bunch of cats in what seems to be the ruins of an ancient castle. As the story progresses, we understand that her main goal is to be adored by the cats. To do so, she tries to earn their love, first of all by giving them food, which they kind of appreciate, but it kind of reveals to be insufficient to be like actually adored. So she gets progressively more desperate, at a certain point, deciding to cover her entire naked body with catnip and just lay there for the cats to come and sniff it off of her. And sure, the cats like immediately surround her, but their attention was directed mostly to the catnip and not so much to the girl herself. Another setting that seems to be a favorite of Kenji Tsuruta is the city of Venice, because 5 out of the 16 stories that are in this volume are in fact set in Venice, and as the author states, they are all inspired by the time he visited Venice while on vacation some years ago. These stories tend to keep that same dreamlike quality, but at least it all seems to happen in a more familiar world that is lived in by other people and that follows a sort of a more understandable logic. The first story set in Venice is titled A Midsummer Night Duel. I'm translating from Italian because, the version of this manga that I have is in Italian, and the titles are all translated to Italian. That were probably already translated from, like, the English version that was previously translated from the Japanese version, so I can't say if these titles are actually, 100% correct. A girl is trying to get some sleep during a very hot and humid summer night, but her cat doesn't intend on leaving her side. You see, even here, she's not just randomly naked. It's just way too hot to keep, your clothes on to sleep. That makes sense, doesn't it? So the girl ultimately ends up falling on the floor, and, she decides to feed her cat, and the little son of a bitch is, he eats and then just leaves. This story is an extremely realistic representation of how miserable the life of a cat owner can be. Believe me when I say this, I have a cat, and, I would die for him. I would give my life for him every day of the week. But the 90% of the time, he acts like the most toxic little piece of shit ever. And by the way, all of these stories revolve around the character of Mariel. a private investigator that lives in Venice with together with her cat Oni, which is the tuxedo cat. After this story, there is a trilogy called Ave Mariel, which I don't even know how to. I don't really know how to explain this one. The stories, let's go to the La Fenice, let's ride the ferry, and let's enjoy the fog, are all based on first-hand experiences that Kenji Tsuruta lived while on vacation in Venice, as I said previously. Well, obviously, somewhat reimagined. To be honest with you, I didn't care too much for the first story, which depicts Mariel going on a date with a guy at the hotel La Fenice's restaurant, and she gets stalked by her cat. And once they're back home and are about to do the thing, the cat just bites the guy on his feet and just interrupts them. That's about it. I did end up quite enjoying the other two stories though. So Mariel is riding the ferry and is hiding Oni in her coat, as seemingly cats are forbidden from riding the ferry, which is not actually true, as also stated by Kenji Tsuruta himself. And meanwhile, there is also another girl on this ferry that seems to be, well, struggling. A long story short, they both accidentally flash their. I'm tempted. I'm really tempted, but we're gonna remain cultured and unbanned. Okay, I'm not gonna do the joke. So sometime later, in the first story, the unnamed girl is enjoying a foggy Venice when she suddenly decides to strip naked and start dancing in the dance fog as well. That's what you do. This is when she stumbles upon Mariel doing the exact same thing. And realizing that they're doing something that might potentially get them fined and restricted from access in school areas, once they notice a man on a boat approach them, they hide on a bench. Which is how the situation happened from the beginning of this video. As for the last note that holds together the intricate facade, the identity of Kenji Tsuruta's works, as you might have noticed already, are women that in the majority of cases tend to wear very little clothing. In the commentary section of this volume, I found out that the author actually wanted to broaden this idea of nudity, also depicting naked men, and especially, like as he stated, he wanted to depict older people naked as well. But his editor was like, no, you're not doing that. That's not gonna happen. And I might comment on this by saying that Japanese media quite often leans into certain preferences that are not very well received or even considered illegal in other parts of the world, but I've already talked about this way too many times on this channel, so yeah, I'm not gonna, but you know what I wanted to say. Now, having said all of that, let's go back to the premise of this video. Well, is all of this art? Well, what is art? If you ask Google, then the answer is going to be something along these lines. So, skill, imagination, emotive power, and beauty. My problem with this explanation is the fact that 3 out of these are extremely subjective. Because, out of these, technical skill is the only aspect of art that can actually be. Because, if the proportions in a painting are wrong, well, it just looks wrong. If a singer is off key during a concert, it just sounds awful, doesn't it? And if a book has poor vocabulary and bland dialogue, it's just kind of boring to read. Sure, but Picasso drew this once, and everybody was like, "Yeah, that's amazing. That's great. This is art. This is beautiful. I would pay millions for that." Is it about intention then, or maybe about the meaning that art holds behind the surface? Could be, but let's think about this. What would happen then if I drew something like this? Well, people would probably call it shit and advise me to never touch a pencil again in my life. Good, makes sense. So, is it about the character then? The character that is, behind the artwork, the artist? Surely that would make sense. Someone who is just skilled at an art form, well, it's never going to be enough to make art. That person would need first to give it some meaning, some like hidden meaning, or even more obvious meaning, but a certain meaning. It can't just be there on its own. But considering what we said before, they would also need to have a sort of a fan base that would spread this meaning to other people. Let's make an example. Let's go back to this. If I were to draw this, and I would just stop you on the street and be like, "Hey, look at this. I made this. What do you think about it?" You would probably say that it's bad and that you will not consider it as art. But now let's think about this. Let's say you go to an art exhibit, and you see this with my name written on the bottom on the wall of an art gallery. And you pass by and you notice some people looking at it and talking, and you overhear them say that this painting has some really deep meaning to it. There's like the author really wanted to say something with it, that that it's much deeper than you actually initially thought. Well, most probably at that point you're gonna be like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I can see it. I can see this like hidden meaning that the author wanted to portray. I think this is art. That's good. So, well, at this point, does something have to be acknowledged as art to become art? And if that's the case, how many people need to acknowledge this one thing as art for it to be considered as such? Surely it's not enough that the artist himself does. Well, what if his friends and family do as well? Is it art now? Is that enough? All of this to say that this manga is not well known. It's not Attack on Titan, it's not One Piece, it's not fucking Gintama, it's not Haikyuu, it's not even One Punch Man, it's nothing like that. I have no idea how many copies it sold. I don't even think that information is available anywhere. But just looking at this cover art, looking at the art inside, considering the entirety of this volume that I have in my hand, I do think that, well, it is art. Kenji Tsuruta's drawings are really good. The composition is on point. He's straight. He's a bit messy, but it's full of emotive power. And so are the stories. As I said earlier, by not being straightforward, they really do make you think and guess a lot. They manage to put you in a certain mood. And isn't that what art is supposed to do? At the same time, though, is it acknowledged as such worldwide? Well, no. But it is in its own small circle. Because, this sort of special edition that I have, other than containing commentary sections where the author comments his stories, also contains artworks made by other manga artists that were invited to, pay homage to the author. And, well, they obviously accepted because, well, they probably admire his work and thus consider it to be art. By the way, among the authors that drew these artworks for this section, there are some quite well-known names, like, for example, Masakatsu Ishiguro, which is the author of Heavenly Delusion, which I think got an anime adaptation like a year ago or something like that. There's Hiroaki Samura, author of Blade of the Immortal, and also Katsura Terada, which is an extremely well-known illustrator for many different manga series, as well as The Legend of Zelda and Tekken video games. Having said all of that, I personally consider this, as well as, the majority of this, to be art. What do you think? Is this art for you? Okay, thank you very much for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. That would mean a lot to me. Other than that, thank you very much again, and goodbye.